Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. If you've never attended these before, just to explain how they work, I normally do them every Friday at 2:30 UK time. It's an hour after the non-farm payrolls come out. The way it works is we'll have a quick look at what major news events are due out next week. Then we'll go and look at some of the major markets, indices, oil, gold, some currency pairs, Bitcoin. Then I'll jump into the questions and take a look if there's anything that you would like looking at. Before we get started, let's just do a risk warning. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread betting, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Right, it's been a busy week this week. Obviously with the payrolls today, we had that downgrade, didn't we, of the US credit score, credit rating, whatever it is, on, was that early hours of Wednesday? Wasn't it? So it's been a bit of a volatile week, which has left us with a lot of stuff to look at for next week. I think it should be an interesting week next week. But anyway, next week, US inflation on Thursday. Inflation is still very much the big theme, or one of the big themes. So that'll be interesting. Comes out next Thursday. And then on Friday, we've got UK GDP. So the UK economic numbers, how well or how badly is the UK economy doing? I mean, we had the interest rate rise yesterday from the Bank of England, which was expected 0.25% on the UK base rate. So a bit of a quieter week next week, with most of it shoved towards the end of the week. A quick word from my sponsor, which as usual is me. I do a trading course. There are two parts to the course. Medium-term trading, which is holding positions for weeks and sometimes months. There's 11 video lessons on that. There's a shorter term trading course within the course. That's holding positions, not for hours so much, but for days and sometimes a couple of weeks if it goes the right way. There are 7 video lessons on that. As part of the course, the most popular course option, you get 6 live webinars as well. We did the latest one last night. And there's a WhatsApp group that's been running for about 6 months now, where I update every day the stuff I'm talking about. I've talked about these numbers before. Last year, I publicly traded an account, a £4,000 account from November through to January, end of January. That was the result on the £4,000 account, up £2,194 in closed profits. So what does that look like? Let me figure it out rather than trying to guess it. So a 54% return on that. If you look at some of the YouTube videos from November, December last year on the channel, you'll see me talking about that as it goes along. I've just done it again. The period I've done this time, 1st of May to the 31st of July. So again, a 3-month period. A £5,000 account this time around. Booked profits were 3,116. Closed profits, which means it made 62% over the 3-month period. I mean, obviously, I've got to say, past performance is no guarantee of future performance. I'll do it again in the autumn. Maybe start with 10 grand, do a bigger account. But I do it, obviously I've got my own trading account, but I do it and talk about it because I know that trading education is a minefield and most people who do it are con artists. And I think the easiest way of establishing your credibility is to actually trade and show people the results. So those are the numbers from the 2 times I've done it publicly, the last one ending just at the end of July. So all good. A couple of big trades, again, make all the difference. I'll talk about that a bit more detail in the course and on the WhatsApp group. I'm trying out a slightly different trading approach during August. Just being a bit more active, really. See how it goes. I don't think it'll go horribly wrong. I was wondering if maybe it would generate more profit. But I'm going to take more trades during August and September than I normally would. Typically, I do about 3 trades a week. So I'll do a few more and we'll see how it goes on. But those are the numbers. If you go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk, if you click on performance, there's a bit more detail about that November to January experiment in there, and a breakdown of all the trades as well. If you really want to see all the trades for that, I'll do the same for this May to July thing as well when I get around to it sometime in the next month. So that's that. That's the trading course. That's a bit about my credibility. What I've done, I've opened up this WhatsApp group to anybody who wants to join. So it used to be just for people who've done the course, but in the last month or so, I've opened it up to other people. So if you want to join the WhatsApp group, you can. In the WhatsApp group, there's a daily update from me. What am I looking at? What trades have I got on? What do I think? Markets I'm watching. So where do I think there might be a trade later on? Trades I'm running. So at the moment, what have I got at the moment? Trades I've done in the last few days. I'm long the dollar index, long the NASDAQ, long oil, and I'm sure there was something else. Long the S&P. I'm sure there's another one in there as well. Anyway, we'll take a look as we go through. And it's all in the WhatsApp group. So that's that. You have to pay for it, the WhatsApp group. But if you want to sign up for a month and try it out, then if you use the code YouTube, you get 20% off the first month. So if you go to the website, go to subscribe, the link is in the description, choose the WhatsApp group. It's normally 50 quid. You can try it for 40 quid. And if you hate it, you can cancel it. But that's it. So that's the WhatsApp group run by me. Here's a screenshot of what it looks like in the morning. An update from me with some blah, 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 markets, open trades, chart of the day type thing. So if you go to the website and click on the that subscribe button at the top on the menu, you can subscribe to the group and try it out. And of course, on the website, there's details about performance and all of that stuff. So there you go. It's less than the price of a cappuccino per day. Absolute bargain. Right, let's have a look. Trustpilot reviews, newsletter, yeah, all that stuff, and the website. There we go. So do that. Let's take a look at these markets. It's been a bit of a funny week, I think. Interesting week, though. Pretty volatile week. I'm not quite sure where to start. I do think there might be a trade in the pound this afternoon, a short trade in the pound, but let's come to that in a minute. We had these payrolls out an hour ago, and they were pretty much as expected, I think. What did they come in at? They came in at, I can't even remember. Did they come in at 187 and the expectation was 200,000, I think. So pretty much as expected. It could make for an interesting afternoon. Let's see how it all shakes down. But let's kick things off with the daily chart. So let's start with stock markets. So as usual, it is the same old stuff for me in stock markets. The trend is up. I am a buyer of the dip. The end. So we've had a bit of volatility in the NASDAQ and the S&P the last week and a half, couple of weeks. But I'm a buyer of the dip. I bought it on, when did I buy it? 2 days ago. Wednesday night, bought the NASDAQ. I think it's interesting. We've sold off a bit. Let's see what happens this afternoon. I would still buy the dips. We've got, if we take that trend out, we've got the bigger trend from right at the beginning of the year, January. That's still in place, even if the market dropped 1,000 points from where it is. That trend is still up. So I'm a buyer of the dip of the NASDAQ. Interesting to see what happens this afternoon. Do we get a strong finish, which perhaps sets us out for another rally next week? I don't know. Let's see. If I was a buyer this afternoon, the closest I would have my stop, I did put this in the WhatsApp group, I would go underneath the lows of yesterday, 15,275 or whatever they are. Let's see what happens. But yeah, for me, trend's still up, nothing's changed, bit of volatility, blah, that's it. S&P, same on the S&P. The trend since March, still up. It's broken a bit of a short-term support level this week. Again, the aggressive trade here for me, if I was a buyer now at 45.30, I'd put my stop under yesterday's low. That's an aggressive trade. A more relaxed trade would be actually to wait to see where it finishes today. Maybe the more medium trade for Monday, I'd be a buyer with a stop underneath the July low, 43.79, whatever it is. Let's see what happens. It's only the first 10 minutes of official US trade, so a lot can change. Even though everything's got off to a strong start. Let's see how it all stacks up as the day goes on. But an interesting afternoon, And for those in the WhatsApp group, I will do an update a bit later on. We'll see how it's all sitting, and we'll see what it is from there. So that's that. That's the US stocks. Trends still up. German, what's it? DAX. I did get stopped out on this week. Did a short-term trade on Monday. Got stopped out pretty quickly. But on Monday, the DAX hit fresh all-time highs. So again, for me, it shows the trend is up. I want to be a buyer of the dips. Blah, blah, blah. Same old, same old. I think it's an interesting week for the DAX next week. You know, again, we've got this big support down here ahead of 15.4. Coming in around 15,450. If I was a buyer on Monday, I'd have my stop somewhere the other side of that. It has been a bit scrappy over the last couple of days. Obviously, it's getting a bit dragged higher at the moment because of what these US markets are doing. But for me, you know, I would still be a buyer of the DAX on dips until things change. So that's that. I still prefer the S&P and the NASDAQ, but that's the DAX. FTSE. A little bit different, the FTSE, of course. Different makeup to some of these other indices. More blue chip, established, not quite as momentum driven. Bit boring this year, you could say. You know, the FTSE this year is trading now pretty much where it was right at the beginning of the year. You know, so we've been up a bit, we've been down a bit, bang, and it's in the middle. So just a bit boring, really, the FTSE 100. Have a look at the Nikkei. I would buy that as well. The trend is up since March. It's been a bit of a sideways 6 weeks. But we've got big support down at 31.4. So I think it's another interesting one. These stock markets look interesting going into next week. Let's see how it all looks on Monday. But assuming all these levels hold today and we don't get a massive collapse as the day goes on, I think it's interesting for perhaps a bit of a bounce next week. Let's see how it all sorts itself out. But yeah, no real change from what I've been saying. If you've watched a few of these, what I've been saying for quite a few weeks and months now, you know, the trend is up. I want to be a buyer of the dip and blah, blah, blah. That's it really for me on stock markets. Let's have a look at oil. I think oil has been a really interesting market this week. Oil was my biggest winning trade in July. I put the trade on in July, but I only actually closed it on Wednesday. So it counts to August numbers for me because I came out of it in August. On the dailies, it's still boring. Okay, this is the trend for oil since the beginning of the year. You know, it's sideways in this big sideways range. We've got support mid 60s to 68. Up here, not a million miles away from where we are now. You know, it started to run out of steam in the past, in April. So on the medium term, still pretty boring. You know, it doesn't look like oil is going to be troubling $100 a barrel anytime soon. So let's see what happens. But the trade I did in July that was the big winner, I'd ended up, I can't remember, I was roughly here. I think I'd bought in here somewhere, got stopped out and bought back in again here. And then the market obviously just ran away. Absolute dream of a trade where it just goes up every day from the 18th of July, and I came out of it on the 2nd of August. This big sell-off we had on Wednesday. Don't know why it sold off so much, and I don't care either. But it went from $82.50 down to $79. So it was a big move on Wednesday. I ended up buying in on Wednesday evening. I put it in a WhatsApp group, bought about 8 o'clock Wednesday evening. Had a bit of a wobble the next day, but it's got to move on again. And here we are, back up at these highs. It's a really interesting market. So I'm in the trade. I've got a trailing stop on the trade. It'd be nice if it broke out through 82.50. Bit more momentum from here. So that's an interesting market to watch next week. But, of course, one eye on these old highs from back here. Around $83.50, you know, and it did run out of steam. So I would be perhaps a little bit wary, but I think, again, it's an interesting market going into next week. Oil, boring on the dailies still, unless we get a breakout, of course, through sort of $84. But on the hourlies, absolute dream of a trend during July. Really easy trade. Once you got into it, it was an easy trade. If only they could all be like that. But you only need, you know, one big winner a month completely changes your P&L. You know, if you have, you know, 5 trades that make 100 quid, 5 trades that lose 100 quid, then 1 trade that makes 300 quid, it's a good month. And that's the reality of trading, you know, is for me it is anyway, trying to put myself in the way of at least the chance of having one or two big winners in the month make such a difference. That's oil. Anyway, interesting one for next week, I think. Natural gas. I'm short natural gas in this account. This is a real money account that I use on these YouTube things. So I'm in short. I think did go short last week, natural gas. I can't remember. Went short at 262. It's been down a bit. It's been up a bit. I did move the stop yesterday to break even. I wonder if I get stopped out today. Let's see what happens. But let's take a look at the chart for natural gas. If we go with the dailies, I think that the jury, for me anyway, is still out as to whether or not the trend in natural gas is finally reversing. We had this, I'm sure we all know, if you've been following markets since last year, natural gas was big story because of the obviously the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Massive slide from $10 down to $2 in April. And since then, we've been sort of banging around a bit sideways in natural gas. So for me, I think it needs to break $3 to suggest that we do have a proper trend reversal on, and it's time to think about being a buyer in the medium term. On the hourlies, there was, I put this in a WhatsApp group, there was perhaps a trade early in the week. I wouldn't have taken it because it's all a bit scrappy, but 240 on natural gas has been something of a floor going all the way back to June now. So 6 weeks, 7 weeks, we've seen 240 being a floor. But it's just a bit scrappy for me. So nothing too exciting for me in natural gas. And I saw someone mention heating oil at the beginning. Let's have a look at that. Oh, I buy. Oh, that's not cracking. That's a buying opportunity in heating oil. This is a great market, heating oil. I've never traded it though. I don't know why. But what an absolute brilliant trend in heating oil. But we've had the downtrend, and then we've had this uptrend, a bit like oil's uptrend, but arguably even better, where it's gone from 240 to just above 3 at the moment. Another great one on the hourlies. I mean, what a dream of a trend that is. I've spent far too long looking at it and not actually putting a trade on. For me, that's another interesting market going into next week. Later today, I'd be a buyer of the dip. The closest I'd have my stop, the other side of yesterday's low. Let's see what happens. I've got to try and pull my finger out and actually get a trade on in heating oil during August. Let's see what happens there. All right, let's take a look at some currencies. There's a lot going on at the moment. I am long the dollar index, and I'm still long. I think it's going to be an interesting afternoon. I think there's a trade this afternoon. The dollar index, I think, big picture, I'm not really sure, to be honest. I've got a medium-term short that I've been running since about Feb, and I've got a short-term long that I've been running since Tuesday. I would be a buyer of the dip at the moment. I think it's still a little bit messy perhaps on the medium-term chart, gradually still down. What's been interesting though, the reason I bought it, I was trying to buy it down here. This is an hourly chart now. I was trying to buy it here and the thing just ran away. And I bought it on Tuesday in here. So it's been up a bit and now it's down a bit, but my stop is still the other side of here. I do wonder if when things calm down, does this end up being a buying opportunity? If you still believe the trend in the dollar index since the 18th of July, then this is an opportunity to buy the dip. If I was a buyer of the dip, it does depend on where it stops. But the closest I would have my stop at the moment would probably be the other side of 101.35, which is probably where my stop is anyway. So I think that's a really interesting one to watch this afternoon. So if you're craving a bit of short-term action on a Friday afternoon, perhaps the dollar index is one. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Are we going to see these buyers come back in, or actually is the payrolls this afternoon the catalyst for the dollar to reverse and go back and test those old lows? I don't know. I'd be leaning to be a buyer though. So it's an interesting one to watch this afternoon, which of course filters through to some of these other markets. Pound against the dollar and euro dollar. These are interesting markets. And again, you could absolutely make the argument for being a buyer or a seller. And that's the reality of markets. I think if somebody's new to markets, they might think, well, it's really obvious that you want to be a buyer here or a seller. But of course, if that was the case, markets would just move in a straight line because everyone was the same direction, and that's not the case. But pound against the dollar, there's absolutely an argument to be a buyer or a seller. So the argument for the buy side is the big trend is up. So we go back to October last year, bang, 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 the trend is up. What we've been through since the middle of July is a correction in that trend. We've come back to the trend line. Let's all load up and buy the pound. Perfectly valid bit of analysis there based on that medium-term trend. So I think that's an interesting one. But on the hourlies, I would also argue on the shorter term time frame that the trend is still down. So we have conflicting trends. And the assumption is the bigger trend will overrule the shorter term trend. But we do have a downtrend on the pound against the dollar, and it was only yesterday that it hit its lowest for that downtrend so far. So one trade I am thinking about this afternoon, depending on what happens, is, I haven't drawn that very well, is going short, see if it stops ahead of 128, which is the high from Wednesday, and then think about going short. Because I'm just wondering if this is a bit of an overreaction. Of course, it's basically the same trade as looking to buy this dollar index dip. On this trade, I'm buying the dollar index. On this trade, I'd be selling the pound and buying the dollar. So I think it's interesting, an interesting confliction of trends. Similar setup on euro dollar, same sort of thing. There we go. Euro dollar trend since September of last year has come back to the trend. I mean, that is on the daily chart, that is a textbook buy the dip. And if I was a buyer at 110, I'd have a stop at below 108 at the moment on euro US dollar. Interesting to see how that works out. And there's the rally. There's the trend though on the hourly charts. So again, what do? You've got to pick your time frame and trade accordingly. So yeah, medium term, buy, short term. I wonder if we are going to have at least another little push from the US dollar. Let's see what happens. But interesting markets, I think, these two. And of course, because the dollar's moving, then we'll see the price of gold moving as well. I really don't know with gold. What would you do? I would be a buyer. Probably not today, but on Monday. And if I was a buyer on Monday, the closest I'd have my stop is the other side of 1890. So it's been a bit, sideways now, hasn't it? Since June, July, and here we are in August. It's a bit of a nothing thing for me. I did have a trade on gold. I think it got stopped out at break even. So nothing too exciting. Not as exciting as this bit we had in gold when we had it trending higher. It's just gone a bit dull. But I'd probably lean towards being a buyer rather than a seller. Silver. Silver, we still do have that trend on silver going back to September last year, which is nearly a year ago now, isn't it? 11 months. So the trend on silver is up. Again, I wouldn't do anything today. It did slip to a new low for that sell-off today. Maybe it's an interesting one for next week if it nudges a bit lower. If I was a buyer of silver on the daily charts, I'd have my stop the other side of that low there, which is, let's call it $22 for the sake of argument. So that might be interesting. Let's see what happens. What else? We've done that. We've done oil. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. I mean, God, that is really dull, isn't it? That is the daily chart we're looking at. Look at that massive lack of volatility in Bitcoin. Then we have a day there, 1st of August, goes crazy again the next day, and goes boring again then. Dull market. I would buy the dip though. The trend in Bitcoin is up. It gets a bit more interesting, I think, if it gets knocked back down to 26 or 27. But the trend is up. So if I was a betting man, I'd say it was more likely to go to 40,000 than 20,000. Or would I? I don't know. This is a big barrier so far, this 32.5 level. But I'd rather buy the dip. But yeah, a bit uninspiring, I think, Bitcoin at the moment. So what's interesting? Well, there's a lot that is interesting. Stock markets are interesting going into next week, I think, because we've had this wobble this week, and we are seeing some of these gains being given up. Look at this volatility. We are seeing a bit of volatility. Let's see where they end the day. Nasdaq and S&P. DAX, the German market, because we got this trend that it's pretty close to. That's an interesting one for next week. And the dollar, because we are seeing this dollar sell-off going on over the last couple of hours. Do you think this is a buying opportunity? Do you think it's the start of a deeper sell-off? Interesting. And of course, that ties in to the likes of pound against the dollar and the euro. So quite a bit to watch. Yeah, that's it. So for me, my trades, like I say, I'm long the dollar at the moment, short-term chart. It's back, it's below where I bought it, slightly underwater on that. I'm long the Nasdaq, that's pretty much where I bought it. And I'm long oil, which is on a trailing stop. Would be quite handy if that broke out. The other interesting thing, maybe it'll come up in the questions, was copper, which again is obviously relies on the dollar, moves inverse to the US dollar. I thought it was interesting because we've got this great trend on the shorter term that's been going for about 5 or 6 weeks in copper. And again, if you thought copper was going to go up, I think it's an interesting level down here to buy it. If I was a buyer where it is now at 384, I'd put a stop the other side of 375. The daily charts look a bit like that. So we have had this trend for more than 12 months now in copper, and this is the latest little acceleration. So I think it's an interesting market, copper, but very dollar dependent as to what happens. So let's see. So a few bits and pieces to watch there. So we'll jump into some of the stuff you want looking at. But don't forget, if you want to join the WhatsApp group, it's like one of these live streams every day. What a dream. Every morning. A stream of consciousness about what the markets are doing. If you go to the website and if you put in YouTube, you can have 20% off the first month's subscription. But let's take a look at some of the questions. Have a look at some of the markets you want looking at. And let's see if there's a trade to do anywhere. We looked at heating oil, didn't we? Let's have a look at that heating oil. Let's go on the hourlies. Is there a trade there? Not yet in heating oil. Who are the liquidity providers and what is their role in trading in currency pairs, for example? I have no idea. I really believe that the role of liquidity providers is very obscure in trading. Okay, me, I don't care. As long as there's liquidity there, I don't care who's providing it. And most of us as retail traders will not be big enough to worry about a lack of liquidity. So I would say my advice on that will be don't even think about it, because who cares about it? The market's there. FX is the highest volume market in the world if we're talking about currencies. It's a massive interbank market, all the banks trading with each other, and then we are just like little gnats on the back of the elephant that is the currency markets. So obviously if you want to find out more about it, Google away, but I really, I don't care. And I've been doing this for 20 odd years. I don't care about it. Unity. Let's have a look at Unity. What is Unity? Is it a stock? Unity Foods. You have to narrow that down for me. I've got Unity Software. I'm going to guess Unity Software. Let's go with Unity Software. That's what I'm going to guess. Oh, it's having a little crumble, isn't it? It's interesting, this one. What would you do here? I don't know. What would you do? You could, again, there's always an argument for being a buyer or a seller. You could take the view, this recovery, since whenever it is, May, where it did pretty much double, has run out of steam and we're going down again. Me, I would be tempted to give it one last chance of a rally. So I'd be tempted to be a buyer when the weakness stopped and put a stop the other side of 38 or 36. But if it starts breaking below 38, it does look like that recovery is well and truly over, isn't it? So yeah, it's a wait and see for me. Bank Nifty, we looked at those the other week, didn't we? That was an interesting one. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it? Bank Nifty, which I was guessing was the Indian. Can't find it now. Is it Nifty? Is it an actual bank or is it an index? I don't know. Whatever it was, but I remember it. I would be a buyer. There we go. I'd buy it on Monday. Obviously, that's not financial advice, but I remember this one because we'd had this great trend since the COVID lows, 2020. Bang, bang, bang. We had these highs in December 22. Came back to it, May 23. Couldn't get through it. And we've had the breakout. So if you believe the breakout, it's an interesting trade. So for me, I'd be a buyer wherever it is on Monday. The closest I would have my stop would be the other side of, let's say 43, maybe even a bit lower. But it's interesting, you know, can't break out, breaks out, comes back, bang, bang, bang. So for me, if I believe the break, I want to be the buy the dip after the breakout. You have a unity trade going. Oh, do I? Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. Well done. Well remembered. Yeah. What's my stop on that trade? 35 is my stop on the unity trade. So I don't know when we did it. Let's have a look. Unity. Yeah. So my stop is down here at 35, which I think is fair enough. Yeah. Let's see what happens. But if I wasn't in the trade, I wouldn't buy it today. I'd wait for it to stabilize. So I really don't remember what trades I do. It's just bang them in, put the stop on, and see what happens. But yeah, it's the biggest loser. Bad decision. When did we do that? Let's have a look. 21st of July. Yeah, my memory never goes back that far. So that would have been 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago on the live stream. Biggest loser at the moment. Let's see what happens. But if I wasn't in it, I would wait for it to stabilize. Qualcomm Incorporated. Oof, earnings. Is that an earnings gap, isn't it? So what happened with their earnings? So they came in at 187. The estimate was 180, so it was positive, but revenue was a bit lower. I mean, if you look at the chart this year, that's pretty sideways, isn't it? So for me, you know, I'm looking for stuff that's trending. I've not got much interest in sideways markets. It's in the middle of the range at the moment. If I had to do a trade, I would buy it. Qualcomm. I'd take the view. We've had an overreaction to the earnings. There we go. Let's make it an hourly chart. I mean, it's an interesting trade from that point of view. I mean, I do trade individual stocks. I don't trade them this short term. I look at the dailies. So if I was a buyer of Qualcomm now, I'd be a buyer at 119 and I put a stop maybe at 110. So I've got $9 risk. If the thing claws its way back up to the old highs, there's maybe $15 upside. So it's an interesting trade. It's a boring one on the hourlies. There you go. You can on the dailies, sorry. You know, even going back the last year, it's pretty dull, isn't it? But on the hourlies, it's if you really fancy to punt, it's perhaps quite an interesting one, taking the view that has the market overreacted to those earnings. Let's see what happens. Gen Digital. Oof, what happened there? Earnings today, is it? Beats first quarter revenues. Blah, blah, blah. So how much have they moved? They've moved from, when they close? Close at 1860 and they're $1 higher, $1 and a bit higher today. So they're about 5% higher. Let's have a look on the dailies. It's interesting that, isn't it? I would be a seller though. I would take the view, maybe not be a seller yet, but the thing has been trending lower since Feb 22. So we're 18 months into that when it was $31 back there. It hit a new low for the downtrend in May. So what's that? 2.5 months ago. I would be tempted to go short, but not yet. So I don't believe the downtrend is over yet, is what I'm saying. You know, we obviously no market moves in a straight line. We get counter trend moves like here from September into December, shortest one there. And I would take the view at the moment, this is a counter trend move and I want to go short, but I'd rather it went a bit higher to go short, if that makes sense. So that would be the trade for me. And PayPal, we looked at this yesterday in the one of the webinars I was doing. It was a really good short actually before it got absolutely clobbered. Here we go. I was looking at it. I mean, that for me is, that thing is in a downtrend, PayPal. We got the old highs from July 21 to 2 years ago now, $300, and here we are at 63. So it's dropped 80% in the last however many years, 2 years. And for me, the trend is, I mean, it's almost textbook. That little move there, end of July, back up to the trend line, has a little fiddle around, pretends to break out, and then dumps on the earnings. Why were the earnings so bad? The earnings were actually good. I mean, it beat expectations. But clearly there's something in there that someone didn't like. So for me, I would rather sell a rally. I suppose if you want to be a complete bottom fisher and ignore the trend, I'd be watching the old lows down at 59. It's at 63 today and still falling. So if you wanted to buy the dip in the downtrend, I would want my stop the other side of 59, but I wouldn't want to do it yet. But yeah, trend on PayPal is still down on that one. Cocoa. Do you know cocoa is one of these markets, a bit like heating oil. I always look at it, and I've never traded it. Absolutely, I haven't traded it recently. I traded it a few years back, but absolutely great trend in cocoa. I am waiting for the break. This dotted line you can see on my chart, that is an alert to remind me to buy it if it breaks out. But I mean, what can you say about cocoa? Great trend. It's gone from whatever that is, 22 in September 22 to 35 today ish. So I would buy the dip. I wouldn't buy it yet, but for me that is a buy the dip market because the trend is so strong. So it's pretty. That is a slap you in the face trend, isn't it, on cocoa? Euro sterling. I don't trade this very often. I think it's a bit of a scrappy old market, euro sterling. What would you do on euro sterling? I don't know. I don't know what I'd do. It slipped on the middle of July. It traded to its lowest since August 22. So we nearly hit a 12-month low the middle of July. It has had a bit of a recovery. I've got no idea. If I was a buyer, I would put a stop under 85. If it rallied a bit more from here, I'd like to sell it. But again, for me, if I look at a market and it's like that, I think, well, I'll go and look at something else. There are plenty of markets that aren't just a sort of sideways and scrappy. So I'm not a fan of euro sterling. I think it's a tricky one to call. So it does trend now and again, but we have quite long periods of inactivity, a bit of craziness, and then inactivity again. So I think it is a bit of a difficult one for me, euro sterling. OLED kicked it on their ER yesterday. I've got absolutely no idea what you're talking about, but okay. OLED, Universal Display Corporation. It's an interesting one, that. What would you do? What would you do in this one? Let's take a look. I think there's an argument. I would go short. There we go. I'd give the downtrend one last chance. So even though they've kicked it, I would kick them, assuming that this is a bit of a blip up, bang, 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 and are we going to turn down again? But there's absolutely an argument that this thing has been recovering and it's still recovering, or is the trend still down? I don't know. It's a bit of a wait and see one for me. But if I was going short, I would probably want my stop up there somewhere, 175. Let's see where they settle after this somewhat explosive 10% move we've had after after their earnings. Let's see. Can we have a look at Unity software? We looked at Unity. Had a look at those. You can rewind after to see those. There's a trade running on those at the moment. Biggest loser at the moment is the trade on Unity. What was the next one? China A50. It's an interesting market, China A50. China A50. I would be a buyer and sort of take the view it is reversing. But it's a bit, the problem is it hasn't really been trending, hasn't it? But, I'd much rather buy the S&P or the NASDAQ. But I would take the view on the China A50, we had downtrend, broke out the downtrend in Feb-ish earlier this year, sold off, has stabilised. So if I was taking the view this thing is turning around and we're going to see a recovery, if I was a buyer today at 13,220, I'd put a stop under at least these lows, these 12.2 lows from June. So give it, because it can be a bit of a scrappy market. So again, give it a bit of time to faff around and put a stop under there. Let's see. So I think it's interesting. We did have this big downtrend. It has broken out of that. It just hasn't really got a move on since then, has it? So let's see. Let's see how it all stacks up. Can you talk about Amazon? I was looking at Amazon this week for my stock buying, and look at that. I should have bought it. I was thinking about buying it, didn't buy it. It's always the ones you don't buy. Nice blip higher. I mean, we've obviously looked at this before because I've got this line on here from before. I mean, I'd buy it. I'd rather buy the dip. The risk is the dip doesn't happen. So we've seen it gap up 10% today. I'd buy the dip, but I'd rather wait and not chase it. It's a big old gap, isn't it? So yeah, I think, mate, let's have a look in a week's time and see if it's pulled back a bit from there. Let's see what happens. Unemployment down 3.5%. Weekly claims down in July. June data revised. July up 187. Is it positive for the US dollar? I've got absolutely no idea. I would say, based on what the US dollar has done since the numbers came out, they didn't like it first of all, but will they change their mind? As I often say on these payrolls, I never trade over them because the markets can be a little bit headless chicken, that they suddenly think, oh my God, this is terrible. Oh, actually, no, it's not too bad. Like I say, I'm long the US dollar. I would buy the dip. Blah. That's it, really, for me. Let's see how it ends today. What do you think about gold? We did gold. I think it's boring. I'd buy it, but I think it's a boring market at the moment. Gold, if you can rewind and watch the bit on gold. So we'd had this really good run up and it's all gone a little bit boring. And I think that's it, isn't it? That's the questions. Let's have a quick look. I did some stock trades this week. I've got some stock trades running. What did Apple do? They had earnings out last night. I'm long Apple. I would buy the dip on Apple. Always be a buyer of the dip. What's the big movers today? Google. Nothing too exciting. Okay. So like I say, for next week, for me, it's all about stocks. What are these stock markets doing now? It's just chop, isn't it? Look at it. A lot of volatility. We've seen the NASDAQ. Let's flip this over to a half-hour chart. We've seen the NASDAQ, since the payrolls, trade in a almost 200-point range in the last less than 2 hours. So it is all a little bit headless chicken. Let's see where it ends. Like I say, the trade I fancy this afternoon is a short pound against the dollar. I think is an interesting one, or perhaps long the dollar index. But I'd rather let things settle down a bit. I think stock market's going to be interesting next week because of the big trends. And I'm still in the oil trade. It'd be nice if that broke out. It looks a little bit boring at the moment. Let's see. So yeah, that's it. So we're going to, hang on, a few last minute ones, come on. CDMO, Avid Bio. CDMO. So, okay, Avid Bioservices. Let's have a look at those. What do they do? Biotech stock, aren't they? Let's have a look at those. Okay. So as usual, not one for me because it has completely got clobbered. But for the bottom fisher, it's near a big level. So if I was a buyer now, it's been pretty sideways going back to May 22. If I was a buyer now at 12.20, I would have a stop under $11. So it's a bit of a bottom fishy trade, not one for me as usual, but it's quite an interesting one down there. We looked at gold, Swiss franc against the Hungarian forint or florint. We've looked at that before, haven't we? Swiss franc, Hungarian forint. Let's have a look. It's tricky, isn't it? Good trend here. What would you do? If I had to do a trade, I would probably sell it. I would sell it with a stop above 412. I'd take the view. Again, we've had a bit of a rangy market. Not for me, that is not a market that appeals to me, given the sort of, we have, again, very quiet, explodes, and then perhaps goes very quiet again. So it's not a great one for me, that one. But lots to watch next week in the more traditional markets. So what we're going to do, we'll wrap it up there. Like I say, if you'd like to join the WhatsApp group, go to the website. The link is in the description. If you're in the WhatsApp group, I'll do an update a bit later on if these markets settle down and see what any trades might be. If you use the code YouTube, you get 20% off the first month. I don't think I'm going to be here next Friday because I'm going to be away. So the next live stream will be in a couple of weeks' time. And we'll come back and do it all again then. Just one question's coming. Does earnings season affect your trading style? No, I don't really care, to be honest. No, I don't. I mean, no. For me, it's all about the trend, So I knew Apple had earnings this week, but I've been in that trade for a few weeks. I don't really care about it because I'm not that short term. It would have to be normally, I think, a big shock on earnings to completely change some big trend. So I'm not too concerned about that. So we'll wrap things up there. Have a look at the website for details on the courses and the WhatsApp group. I'll be back in 2 weeks. So until then, good luck with your trading, and let's see where we are in the middle of August.